Sarah sat up in bed, blinking into the dim light. The space beside her was cold, the sheet untouched. At first, she thought William had gone to get a glass of water, but then she heard something, a faint whisper coming from the hallway. She froze. The light was off, but a thin slice of moonlight slipped through the window, cutting shadows across the floor. Slowly, she followed the sound, heart pounding. Then she heard it clearly, William's voice, low and careful. "She doesn't suspect anything yet," he said softly. Sarah's breath caught. "She doesn't suspect what?" she thought as her stomach twisted with unease. She pressed herself against the wall, listening harder, but his next words were too soft to catch. Her pulse raced. Who was he talking to at this hour? After a few tense seconds, she heard footsteps moving closer. Quickly, she slipped back into the bedroom, slid under the blanket, and pretended to be asleep. The bed dipped as William lay beside her. "Where were you?" she whispered, keeping her voice groggy. "Bathroom," he replied without hesitation. "And the phone call?" "Just a client," he murmured. "Work stuff. Go back to sleep." Sarah turned her face away, but the words "she doesn't suspect anything yet" kept ringing in her ears. By morning, William was cheerful, humming as he poured coffee like nothing had happened. Sarah watched him quietly from across the kitchen. When he left for work, she opened her banking app, something she rarely did because William usually handled their finances. Her eyes widened. There were several small withdrawals she didn't recognize. 500 here, 1,000 there. Dozens of them. Her chest tightened. That evening, when William returned home, she kept her tone calm. "I checked our bank account," she said casually. He froze for half a second before forcing a smile. "Small investments, honey. Nothing serious." Sarah nodded slowly. "Right. Investments." But her gut told her it was a lie. That night, William sat beside her on the couch, scrolling through his phone. Every time she glanced his way, he turned the screen face down. When he got up to shower, he left his phone on the table, something he never did. A buzz broke the silence. Sarah looked over. A message appeared on the screen. The sender's name glowed like a warning. Benjamin Morrow. Her heart began to race. She tilted the phone just enough to read the preview. "Just make sure she stays in the dark." Almost there. Her breath caught. Almost there. The sound of running water stopped. Panicking, she put the phone back exactly where it was and sank into the couch, pretending to watch TV. William walked back in moments later, towel around his neck, smiling like nothing was wrong. "Did you decide on dinner?" he asked casually. "Not yet," Sarah replied softly. He picked up his phone without hesitation, unlocking it smoothly. That calm confidence made her skin crawl. As he sat down, Sarah forced a smile, hiding her trembling hands. She wouldn't confront him yet. Not until she had proof. Later that night, lying awake beside him, she whispered into the dark, "Who are you, Benjamin Morrow?" The question lingered long after the lights went out. The next morning, Sarah moved through the kitchen like a ghost. The smell of coffee filled the air, but she barely tasted it. William sat across from her, scrolling through his phone, calm as ever. "You okay?" he asked without looking up. "Just tired," she said, forcing a smile. He nodded. "We should probably get our financials in order, just in case of emergencies." Her hand froze midair. "Our financials?" "Yeah," he said casually, sipping his coffee. "Things like your accounts, passwords, assets. Maybe we should keep everything in one place." Sarah felt her heart pound. William had never cared about her personal accounts before. She forced herself to nod. "Sure. I can make a list." "Good," he said with a faint smile, but his eyes were sharp, too sharp. The rest of the day, Sarah couldn't shake the tension crawling under her skin. Every move William made felt rehearsed, like he was acting out a role. When she caught him staring at his phone, smiling faintly, her stomach twisted. That night, he was unusually affectionate, ordering takeout, cracking jokes, even suggesting they watch one of her favorite old movies. But his laughter felt hollow. Halfway through the movie, he got up for a shower again, leaving his phone on the coffee table. This time Sarah didn't move. She stared at it but didn't touch it. She already knew what she'd find. When he came back, she smiled faintly. "You've been busy lately." He raised an eyebrow. "Work's been crazy. You know how it is." "Right," she said, eyes never leaving his face. "Work." The next morning, William slid a stack of papers across the breakfast table. "Can you sign these real quick?" he asked. Sarah blinked. "What is it?" "Just some updates for tax purposes," he said, his tone smooth. She skimmed the first page, her pulse tightening. Legal language filled the paper, but one line caught her eye. Property transfer agreement. Her name was all over it. Her savings, her condo, her accounts. All to be transferred into William's name. She looked up slowly. "William," she said carefully. "What is this?" He smiled. "Just a precaution, babe. Nothing changes between us." "Nothing changes," she repeated, voice trembling. "You're asking me to sign over everything." He shrugged lightly. "Just consolidating things. For protection." Sarah set the papers down and looked him dead in the eye. "I'm not signing this." William's smile faltered, just for a second. Then he laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Don't be dramatic, Sarah. It's just paperwork." "Then why do you need it done so fast?" she asked softly. His jaw tightened. "You really don't want to do this," he warned, leaning forward slightly. His voice was low, controlled, but something dangerous hid underneath. Sarah met his gaze, calm but steady. "Is that a threat?" He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "I'm just saying, you're making this harder than it needs to be." Her lips curved slightly. "Maybe that's because I see through you now." William waited for her to break, to panic, to give him what he wanted. But Sarah didn't. She stood slowly, gathering the papers. "You're right," she said coolly. "I'll think about it." His brow furrowed. "Good," he muttered, uncertain now. She walked to the kitchen and set the papers neatly on the counter. Her heart pounding but her face unreadable. She wasn't going to argue, not yet. Because now, she knew exactly what game he was playing, and she was ready to play it better. That night, William moved around the house like nothing had happened, pretending everything was fine. But for Sarah, something had changed forever. She wasn't the one being fooled anymore. Now she was the one watching. The next morning, William was already up when Sarah came into the kitchen. He sat at the table, sipping coffee like a man with no worries. "We need to talk," he said calmly, setting his cup down. Sarah tilted her head slightly. "About what?" He took a deep breath, as if the words were difficult. "I think we should separate." There it was. No warning, no emotion, just cold precision. Sarah's chest tightened, but she didn't let it show. "So this is what all the secrecy was about," she said softly. William's eyes flickered. "It's for the best. We've grown apart." "Grown apart," she repeated, voice dripping with disbelief. "You mean you've been planning this?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Sarah leaned forward, folding her hands. "You want out," she said, "but you want to make sure you don't leave empty-handed." His lips pressed into a thin line. "I'm just trying to make things fair." "Fair?" she repeated with a dry laugh. "After what you've been doing behind my back." William's jaw clenched, his control slipping. "Don't start, Sarah. Let's keep this civil." She smiled faintly. "Oh, it'll be civil. But I should tell you something since you're being so honest." He frowned. "What's that?" "I already moved my assets," she said. William froze. For the first time the mask cracked. His expression darkened, confusion flickering into anger. "What do you mean you moved your assets?" he demanded. "Exactly what it sounds like," Sarah replied, her voice calm and deliberate. He stared at her, his jaw tight. The silence stretched like a knife between them. Finally he muttered, "You're going to regret this, Sarah." She stood slowly, her chin lifting. "Maybe. But at least this time, I'll regret something I did for myself. William's glare lingered on her face, cold and hateful, before he turned sharply and stormed out of the room. The sound of the door slamming echoed through the house like thunder. Sarah took a long, shaky breath. She had won this round, but she knew he wouldn't stop there. The next morning she tried to focus on work, but her hands wouldn't stop trembling. Every sound felt louder, every vibration of her phone made her heart jump. Around noon, a knock came at the door, sharp and deliberate. When she opened it, a man in a navy blazer stood there, holding an envelope. Sarah Collins. Yes, she said warily. He handed her the envelope. You've been served. She closed the door slowly, the weight of the document in her hand heavier than it should have been. At the kitchen table, she opened it carefully. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Her eyes scanned the page. William wanted half of everything. Condo, car, her savings, even spousal support. Sarah laughed bitterly. Of course. Later that afternoon, Sarah sat in her lawyer's office, her fingers tapping against the edge of the desk. Patricia, her attorney, flipped through the paperwork with a smirk. Well, Patricia said. He's got nothing. Sarah blinked. Just like that. Just like that. You moved everything before he filed. Legally, he has no access. Patricia looked up with a grin. He can try, but it won't hold up in court. Relief washed through Sarah, though her hands still shook. For the first time in weeks, she felt a small measure of control returning. Patricia leaned back. You did the right thing, Sarah. You were smart. Sarah nodded slowly. I had to be. That evening, Sarah poured herself a glass of wine. The front door swung open a few minutes later. William stood there, his tie loose, anger written all over his face. You think you're clever, don't you? He hissed. Sarah took a slow sip. No, William. I think I'm finally protecting myself. He stepped closer, fists tightening. You planned this. She set her glass down calmly. So did you. For a long moment they stared at each other. Two people who had once shared a home, now standing on opposite sides of a war neither wanted to admit had started. This isn't over, William said coldly. Sarah's eyes didn't waver. No, it's not. But I promise, you'll wish it was. Days passed, but peace never returned. At work, Sarah began noticing strange looks from her colleagues. Quick glances, hushed whispers that stopped when she entered the room. By mid-morning, her assistant, Rachel, hesitated before stepping into her office. Ma'am, I think you should know something, Rachel said softly. Sarah frowned. What is it? Rachel shifted uneasily. There's a rumor going around that you took money from your joint accounts, that you were laundering funds. Sarah's eyes widened. What? I don't believe it, Rachel said quickly. But William, he's been talking to people, lawyers, mutual friends. The story's spreading. Sarah's jaw tightened. He's not just trying to take my money, she said quietly. He's trying to destroy me. By the time Sarah arrived at Patricia's office, she was trembling with anger. This needs to stop now, she snapped, dropping a folder of screenshots onto the lawyer's desk. Patricia flipped through them and gave a dry chuckle. He's desperate. He's slandering me. Yes, but we can use that, Patricia said, eyes narrowing. If he's spreading lies, that's defamation. We'll start with a cease and desist letter. If he ignores it, we sue. I don't want this to drag out in court, Sarah said sharply. I just want it over. Patricia sighed. He's baiting you. Don't let him see you flinch. Sarah nodded, jaw tight. Then it's time he learns who he's dealing with. That evening, Sarah found William at a downtown restaurant, La Rue, one of the city's most exclusive spots. He was laughing over drinks with two colleagues, perfectly at ease, like he hadn't just tried to ruin her life. She didn't cause a scene. She didn't shout. She simply walked to his table, leaned down and whispered, "You have no idea what you've just started." For a brief second, his smirk faltered. Then he straightened his tie and smiled, eyes gleaming with challenge. "Let's see what you've got then." Sarah gave a small nod, her voice steady. "Oh, you will." Then she walked away, leaving him to stew in the silence of his own arrogance. From that moment on, Sarah stopped reacting, she started planning. She gathered documents, organized her accounts, and prepared every piece of evidence she needed. William might have started this, but she was going to finish it. Late one night, she stared out her apartment window, the city lights glowing like tiny fires in the distance. Her reflection in the glass looked different now. Stronger, colder, ready. "Game on," she whispered to herself. The next morning when Patricia called and said, "He's filed for a financial audit," Sarah didn't panic. She smiled instead. If William wanted a war, he was about to get one, and this time she had nothing to lose. The following morning, Sarah arrived at Patricia's office early. Papers were spread across the table, highlighted and color-coded. Patricia looked up as she walked in. "He's requesting a full financial audit," she said flatly. Sarah took a slow breath. "On what grounds?" Patricia shrugged. "He's claiming you mismanaged joint funds and owe him a settlement." Sarah's jaw tightened. "He knows that's a lie." "Of course he does," Patricia said dryly. "He's not trying to win. He's trying to drain you, time, money, and peace of mind." Sarah leaned forward. "Then let's make him pay for every minute of it." They filed a countermotion the same day, demanding an immediate dismissal and full reimbursement for legal costs. Patricia's confidence was unshakable. "Judges don't like time wasters," she said. 2 weeks later, Sarah walked into the courtroom, her heart pounding but her expression calm. William was already seated at the other table, sharp suit, smug smirk. When his eyes met hers, he gave a faint nod, as if he had already won. Patricia leaned over and whispered, "Let him think that. The fall will hurt more." Sarah almost smiled. Almost. When the session began, William's lawyer stood first, papers in hand. "Your Honor, my client has reason to believe Mrs. Collins has been hiding assets to avoid fair division during this divorce." Sarah sat perfectly still, hands folded, eyes fixed ahead. Then Patricia rose smoothly. "Your Honor, all of my client's financial moves occurred before Mr. Collins filed for divorce. There is no proof of mismanagement or concealment. In fact, she slid a thick binder onto the table. We have evidence of the opposite." The judge leafed through the papers in silence while William fidgeted. The air felt electric. After several long minutes, the judge looked up. "The court finds no grounds for a financial audit. The motion is denied. Furthermore, Mr. Collins will cover all legal fees related to this case." The gavel struck once, crisp and final. A murmur rippled through the room. William's smirk vanished. He turned to Sarah briefly, his jaw clenched, eyes burning with quiet rage. Patricia gathered the documents with a satisfied nod. "Told you," she whispered. As they stepped outside, Sarah felt something she hadn't in months, relief. But she also knew men like William didn't stop after losing. They plotted again. Outside the courthouse, William brushed past her without a word, but his voice cut through the air as he passed. "You think this is over? Just wait." Sarah didn't flinch. "I already have," she replied. When he was gone, Patricia turned to her. "He'll try something else. Be ready." Sarah nodded. "He's running out of options." Patricia gave a half-smile. "Desperate men are the most dangerous." Sarah looked toward the city skyline beyond the courthouse steps. "Good," she said quietly. "Then he'll finally show his true face." It didn't take long. The next morning Patricia called again, her tone sharp. "Sarah, we have a problem." Sarah's stomach dropped. "What now?" "There's a new complaint, filed by William and someone named Benjamin Morrow." The name hit her like a spark. "What are they claiming?" "Financial fraud," Patricia said grimly. "They submitted documents showing that you falsified records and moved illegal funds." Sarah's knees weakened. "If that sticks." "I know," Patricia interrupted. But listen. We're already looking into the documents. Something doesn't add up. Hours later, Sarah sat across from Patricia and Beatrice, a forensic consultant. The office smelled of ink and burnt coffee. Beatrice flipped through the so-called evidence, her brows furrowed. "These are good fakes," she said. "Professional work. But whoever did this made one mistake." Sarah leaned forward. "What mistake?" Beatrice turned the page toward her. "The timestamps. These accounts didn't even exist when the transfers supposedly took place." Sarah stared at the highlighted lines, realization hitting her hard. "That's it," she whispered. "That's how we prove they forged it." Patricia grinned. "Then let's end this." 2 days later, Patricia filed a new motion, accusing William and Benjamin of submitting falsified evidence. It was bold, risky, and exactly what Sarah wanted. When the court hearing arrived, the tension was thick enough to taste. William sat stiffly beside his lawyer, confidence fading with every passing minute. Patricia spoke first, calm and precise. "Your Honor, these documents are fraudulent. The financial transactions never occurred. We have certified analysis from a forensic expert." She handed over the files as Beatrice took the stand, detailing every manipulated number and forged signature. The courtroom went dead silent. William's lawyer began to sweat, flipping through papers like he might find a miracle hiding between the lines. Finally, Patricia delivered the final blow. "In light of these false claims," she said clearly, "my client is filing a countersuit for defamation and submission of falsified evidence against Mr. Collins and Mr. Benjamin Morrow." A heavy silence followed. William's lawyer leaned toward him, whispering urgently. Moments later, the man stood up. "Your Honor, my client wishes to withdraw all claims." The judge nodded once. "Motion dismissed. Mr. Collins will also pay all associated legal costs." William's defeat was complete. When the gavel fell for the last time, Sarah felt the world go still. She didn't smile. She didn't speak. She just breathed. As she walked past William, he didn't look at her. His hands were clenched, face pale, pride shattered. She leaned close enough for only him to hear. "We're done here." Outside, the autumn air felt crisp and clean. The storm was over, or at least this part of it was. For the first time in months, Sarah felt peace rising quietly inside her chest. Not victory. Not revenge. Just peace, and the knowledge that she had won it by fighting smart. 2 days later, Sarah sat once again in Patricia's office. A single folder rested between them. Patricia pushed it across the desk with a calm smile. "It's done," she said. William signed the settlement. Sarah hesitated before touching it. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means," Patricia said, leaning back, "he gets nothing. Not a dime. His claims were dismissed, his defamation case collapsed, and his reputation's ruined. It's officially over." For a long moment, Sarah couldn't move. Then she exhaled, a shaky laugh slipping past her lips. "It's really over," she whispered. Patricia smiled softly. "You earned this peace, Sarah." Sarah signed the final documents and tucked them neatly into her bag. The weight that had sat on her shoulders for months finally began to lift. "Thank you," she said quietly, rising from her chair. Patricia stood and shook her hand firmly. "Go enjoy your life now. Don't look back." Sarah smiled faintly. "I won't." As she stepped out into the late afternoon light, the air felt different, cleaner, lighter. For the first time, she wasn't walking away from a battle. She was walking toward freedom. That evening, Sarah's mother, Margot, insisted on hosting a dinner. "We're celebrating tonight," she said over the phone. "You're coming, no excuses." When Sarah arrived, Margot wrapped her in a tight hug, her eyes brimming with relief. "It's over," she whispered. Sarah nodded, smiling through the weight of everything she'd survived. Beatrice was already there, pouring champagne into 3 glasses. She lifted hers with a grin. "To freedom," she said, "and to never letting a man think he's smarter than us again." Laughter filled the room, light, genuine and healing. As they ate, Sarah listened to her mother and Beatrice talk, their voices warm and familiar. For the first time in months, she wasn't calculating her next move or waiting for the next blow. She was simply present. At one point, Margot reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You're stronger than you think," she said softly. Sarah smiled. "I didn't feel that way for a long time." "You do now," Margot replied, eyes glistening. "And that's what matters." They clinked glasses again, and Sarah felt something deep inside her finally settle. Later that night, after the laughter faded and the house grew quiet, Sarah stood on Margot's balcony overlooking the city lights. The skyline shimmered against the night sky, Chicago glowing like it had been reborn just for her. She took a long breath, letting the cold air fill her lungs. Every flicker of light reminded her of how far she'd come, from fear to resolve, from betrayal to power. Her phone buzzed once on the table behind her. An unknown number. She didn't hesitate. Luck. Then she turned back to the city, smiling faintly. Back home, Sarah poured herself a glass of wine and opened her laptop. A blank document stared back at her. For a moment, she just looked at the empty page. Then she began to type. "This is my story. The story of how I took back my life." Her fingers moved faster, each word flowing like release. She wrote about trust, betrayal, and survival, not for pity but for closure. By the time she finished the first paragraph, she was crying softly, not from sadness but from freedom. When she finally leaned back, she whispered to herself, "This is my story now." Outside, thunder rolled faintly in the distance, the kind that came after heavy rain. The world was quiet again, peaceful. Sarah closed her laptop, wiped her tears, and poured another glass of wine. For once, she didn't feel angry or afraid. She felt complete. The woman who once doubted herself was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, wiser, unbreakable. In the days that followed, Sarah began rebuilding her life one small step at a time. She went back to work, smiled more, and started sleeping through the night again. People still whispered about what happened, but she didn't care anymore. William had tried to ruin her, but he had failed. Benjamin had vanished from the picture. His name nothing more than a stain on William's final mistake. The chaos had ended, and from the ashes, Sarah had found something priceless: clarity. She had lost a husband but gained herself. One Sunday morning, she met Patricia and Beatrice for brunch. The sun was bright, laughter was easy, and for the first time, Sarah caught herself genuinely smiling without effort. Patricia raised her coffee cup in a quiet toast. "To peace," she said. Sarah lifted hers. "To starting over." They clinked cups, and the moment felt symbolic, like closing a book and opening another. When she walked home afterward, she realized that she no longer thought about William. Not with pain, not with anger. Just nothing. And that nothing felt like victory. That night, Sarah stood by her window, the city lights stretching endlessly beyond her reflection. She thought about everything she had endured, every betrayal, every sleepless night, every fear. And she smiled. She had faced deceit, manipulation, and heartbreak, yet she had risen stronger than before. In a whisper meant only for herself, she said, "No one will ever take my power again." Then she turned off the light, letting the darkness surround her, not as a threat but as peace. Her story wasn't about loss anymore. It was about freedom. And this time the ending was hers.